You are not behind. You are just measuring your life with the wrong scoreboard. At 25, it feels like everyone is ahead. Better jobs, better relationships, better timelines. And the more you scroll, the more convincing it becomes, like there is. A pace you were supposed to match but somehow miss. And that quiet pressure starts to build, not loud enough to panic, but constant enough to drain you. But here is the part nobody tells you. Most of what you are comparing yourself to has almost nothing to do with what will actually matter in 10 years. People are optimizing for what can be seen, titles, milestones, aesthetics, things that signal progress on the surface, while completely ignoring the invisible structures that determine whether those things last. So the anxiety you feel is not proof that you are failing. It is a signal that you are looking at the wrong layer, because long-term success is rarely visible early. It is built quietly through things that do not get attention. No applause, no validation, just repetition. And that is why it feels so uncomfortable, because you are doing work that does not look like progress yet, while everyone else seems to be moving forward. But what looks fast is often fragile, and what looks slow is often building something real. So instead of asking why you are behind, there is a better question. What are you actually building right now that will still matter when nobody is watching? Most people think they have a discipline problem, but what they actually have is a system problem. You wake up with good intentions, maybe even a clear plan, but within minutes your attention is already fragmented. You check your phone, open multiple tabs, respond to messages that were never urgent, and by the time you try to focus, your mind is already scattered, not because you are weak, but because your environment is designed to pull you in 10 different directions at once. And while this is happening, there is another layer running quietly in the background, an invisible script of how your life is supposed to look by now, a certain career path, a certain level of income, a certain kind of relationship. And even if you never agreed to it, you still feel judged by it, so you start measuring yourself against timelines that were never yours. You create mental checklists of what should have happened by this age, and every unchecked box starts to feel like a personal failure. This is where things begin to break down, because your decisions stop being about what is useful for you and start being about what looks right to others. You choose paths based on status instead of skill. You say yes to opportunities out of fear of missing out. You keep relationships that drain you because they seem important on the surface. And over time, you spread yourself so thin that nothing gets your full attention. This creates a loop. You feel behind, so you try to do more. Doing more creates more noise. More noise reduces your clarity. And with less clarity, you make worse decisions, and the cycle repeats. Not because you are incapable, but because the structure you are operating in makes it almost impossible to win consistently. The shift does not come from doing more. It comes from seeing differently. At some point, you start to notice a pattern. The people who look successful early are not always the ones who sustain it, and the ones who seem slow or even lost sometimes build something much more stable later. And that is when a simple but uncomfortable realization appears. You have been confusing the markers of success with the makers of success. The job title, the salary, the relationship status. These are outcomes. They are visible, easy to compare, easy to chase. But they are not what creates success. They are what comes after. What actually creates them is much less visible. Your ability to focus when no one is watching. Your ability to make decisions without external approval. Your ability to stay with something long enough for it to compound, and here is where it becomes important. Your 20s are not just a time to explore. They are a time when your brain is still shaping how you think, plan, and respond to difficulty, which means every repeated behavior is not just a choice, it is training. When you constantly seek validation, you train yourself to depend on it. When you constantly avoid discomfort, you train yourself to escape it. And when you constantly switch directions, you train yourself to never go deep. So the real question is not what you achieved this year. It is what you are reinforcing every day without realizing it, because those patterns will follow you much longer than any short-term result. Once you see this clearly, the pressure to look successful starts to lose its grip, and a different question begins to matter more, not how fast am I moving, but what kind of system am I becoming? So instead of chasing more outcomes, you shift your attention to building a simple system that runs in the background of your life. 3 parts: identity, capacity, and energy. Not complicated, but extremely easy to ignore. First, identity. Most people never question why they want what they want. They inherit goals from their environment and spend years pursuing something that was never truly theirs. So start small. Take one goal you are currently chasing and ask yourself why. Then take that answer and ask why again. Do this a few times until the answer feels real instead of automatic. This is how you separate your direction from external noise. Second, capacity. This is your ability to actually produce results when it matters, not by doing more, but by doing one thing properly. Begin with a single block of focused work each day. Even just 30 minutes, no phone, no switching, no background noise, one task from start to finish. It will feel uncomfortable at first. That is expected. You are retraining your attention to go deeper instead of constantly resetting over time. This becomes a competitive advantage that compounds quietly. Third, energy. This is the part most people ignore until they burn out. Your energy is not unlimited, and if you do not protect it, your system will eventually collapse. Start by removing what drains you without adding value. Reduce unnecessary inputs. Limit the amount of decisions you have to make each day. Create small routines that repeat, so you do not rely on motivation. Imagine a simple stick figure sitting at a desk, 10 tabs open, switching constantly. Nothing finishes. Now imagine the same figure with one tab, one task, a clear boundary. The difference is not effort, it is structure. And that structure is what you are building here. Something quiet, something stable, something that works even when you do not feel like working. When you stay with this system long enough, the change is not dramatic. It is subtle, almost easy to miss at first. Your days feel a little less scattered. You finish more of what you start. The constant urge to check something disappears more quickly, and the noise in your head becomes quieter. Not because life is easier, but because your attention is no longer being pulled in every direction. Over weeks, this turns into something more noticeable. You begin to trust your own pace. You stop reacting to what others are doing, and you start seeing progress that is actually yours, not borrowed from comparison. And over months, the difference becomes structural. While others burn out from trying to maintain an image, you are building capacity that does not depend on motivation. While others keep restarting, you are continuing, and that alone creates distance. Not fast, but consistent. And consistency begins to compound in ways that intensity never could. You make fewer impulsive decisions. You recover faster when things go wrong. And you spend less time questioning every step you take. This is where most people misunderstand the result. They think the reward is external success, but the real shift is internal stability. You are no longer constantly negotiating with yourself just to do basic things. Your system carries you forward even on low-energy days. And that changes everything, because progress is no longer something you force. It becomes something that happens as a natural outcome of how you operate. You do not need a completely new life to move forward. You need a system that quietly supports the one you already have. The pressure to catch up will always be there, but you do not have to organize your life around it, because most of what looks urgent right now will not matter later, and most of what actually matters will not look impressive in the moment. So instead of trying to prove something, start building something small, something repeatable, something that works, even when you are not at your best. Because that is what carries you further than motivation ever will. If there is one idea to keep, let it be this: you are not behind. You are just early in a process that does not show results immediately. And that is not a weakness. That is the advantage. So take one piece from this, just one. Maybe a focused work block. Maybe removing one source of noise. Maybe questioning one goal that never felt right. and start there, no pressure to do everything. Just enough to change your direction slightly. Because over time, small shifts become completely different outcomes. If you have ever felt stuck in that loop of comparison and confusion, type system in the comments. And if this helped you see things a bit more clearly, subscribe each week. We refine one small part of how you think, how you work, and how you build a life that actually fits you.